Why are the public meetings cancelled for safety while no crimes are linked to political events, yet only political events are cancelled? To my person, there have been no reports that any crimes have been politically linked, and the investigation is still ongoing. Regarding public meetings being cancelled, let me be clear. The Council of Ministers' decision so far has been to prepare guidelines on political campaigns. Even with this calm decision, as the responsible minister, due diligence is required to ensure that the MR is legally vetted. To date, the process is still ongoing. It is not under my purview to decide when the legals that are busy with this document is going to give it back to the minister. And this minister will not put pressure on anyone to do their job. Everyone is listening to Parliament, everyone knows what is going on, and the legal has to do their job. And when they do their due diligence and they give me that report, then we go forward. Because it has to be legally known if it is right based on our decisions in CALM. It could be a wish, and maybe it could be against also the necessary laws that we have in place. So let the legals do their job, and when they give me that information, then I can elaborate further, and it will be publicly known to everyone. MP Westcott Williams, through you, Chair, asks, when will the guidelines be finalized? The MR will be finalized after the feedback is received from the Legal Affairs and will return to the Council of Ministers if necessary, based on that feedback, after which it will be signed by my person. 2, can public political gatherings be held tonight or tomorrow before the guidelines are published? Again, as long as the guidelines are pending, public political gatherings may continue. This has with respect, we have a police force, we have asked for assistance, we have assistance here, and the police force, once informed that there are certain public gatherings, will do their job to make sure that public safety and order is in place for our country. What does the minister consider on the results if the proposed measures were to be annulled? If it's supposed to be annulled, it will be annulled. Again, it is all based on the legal measures. CALM, Parliament, everybody have their wishes in life. But we have the legals in place that will advise us if we are within the framework of the law. So therefore, as I mentioned, let's give the legals their chance to do their job. It is a wish from CALM. We made a decision. The legals still have to say, listen, if that decision is feasible within the framework of the law. Are there any additional programs concerning gun possession being considered? On Monday upcoming, there is a driehoek overleg with the Prosecutor General's Office, the Chief of Police of the St. Martin Police Force, and my person as the Minister of Justice. This meeting is planned. The topic will be on the agenda. Who is considered a high-profile person concerning the deployment of the Marines? If I can recall, I did also mention that the members of Parliament are the high-profile persons, and not limited to, as well, the Council of Ministers and other high-ranking individuals in our country. Through you, Chair, clarification questions from MP Marlin. Why are public gatherings restricted while others have been held without mass security? Public gatherings, again, cannot be restricted until if it is mentioned on a signed publication by my person, which again, it is at Legal Affairs, and we are waiting on feedback and will return to the Council of Ministers if necessary. And based on that feedback, then it will be signed by my person. Why is only one person given security, and how much does it cost the country? That is a decision made in consultation with different judicial agencies on the threat analysis and I would like to deviate. That is under the purview of the Prosecutor General for St. Martin, not the Minister of Justice. I did not make that decision to have any detailed security. It's an ongoing investigation, and as an official that worked as a police for many years, certain people will have that certain type of protection because they need to be questioned eventually. So in case something happened to them, we are supposed to be able to reach them, pull them in, and have that conversation with them. So of course, their safety and security at that time is looked at from that perspective. Not that we fear that anything will happen, but of course, a situation happened, the person is a witness, and therefore, precautionary measures were put in place by the Prosecutor General's office. The cost was also mentioned. I don't see it here in this lineup, but the cost was also mentioned in my answers with the SWAT team to the tune, I think, of 80, was it 80 or 60,000 guilders. Through your chair, MP Irian, clarification, question, and answer. Are any family members of the Council of Ministers provided with extra security? Presently, there is one family member of the Council of Ministers being provided with extra security. This decision was taken by the police force of St. Martin as an extraordinary or precautionary measure. Okay? Will public meetings be ended a few days before elections? In what is the logic behind this decision? As there is no timeline, I cannot speak to the number of days before election that we can expect the MR to take in effect. Through you, Chair, from the Honorable Member of Parliament, MP Bruch, his clarification question was, how long ago was the quotation for scanners requested, and when was the feedback expected? In March 2021, Customs requested and received a quotation for a container X-ray scanner from Sectors Technologies, reps for Smith Detections. At the time, the container scanner would have cost approximately 2.9 million United States dollars, including civil works. Before this, Customs had invited Sectors Technologies to St. Martin to assess the harbor facilities intended for the scanner's installation. During the assessment, it was determined that the scanner could not be accommodated within the current harbor setup due to space constraints. Does the new guideline stop people from voting or getting information to vote? No draft MR does not prevent anyone from voting or from getting information to vote. I will basically extend as well, based on conversations with the chief and other stakeholders, the Marines will not be standing at the polls. That is not what we are using the Marines for. They will not be at the polls. They will be assisting the police, just like the VKS, on patrols, with controls, etc., for our public safety. Can the minister share details of the guidelines? The guidelines are still awaiting the finalization of the legal vetting, and therefore the details will not be disclosed at the time. And why? Again, the Council of Ministers has made a decision. We have to see if the decision can be properly vetted and given us back their report as what can and what cannot. What brought the Council of Ministers to pause public gatherings? The guidelines are still awaiting the finalization of the legal vetting, and therefore the details, again, cannot be disclosed at this time. I would also like to mention, because all of these questions I know stemmed from one thing, the press briefing by the Prime Minister. He is the Prime Minister, but he's also human. A decision was made by the Council of Ministers. And basically, I can only assume that based on his mind for the public safety, that because of the decision making by the council, he chose, unfortunately, to publicly say something about it without having the proper guidelines put in place. And that's the only thing that I can come up with as to what and the reason why it was mentioned. MP La Cruz, through you, Chair. What is the purpose of the military's presence at the voting polls, and how does it impact our voter turnout? Again, like I mentioned, the military is not coming here to stand at voting polls. It is to strengthen the capacity of the police force from now and until a little after election, based on public order, based on safety for the public order. MP Jacobs, what constitutes a political public gathering and/or types of gatherings affected by the new measures of the CALM decision? Again, we don't have an MR in place, so with that, I cannot deliberate based on that question. Once an MR is put in place, then we can say basically what is constituted and what's not.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah. Your social health insurances.
As a presenter of this motion last week, I believe the intention was quite clear, and I believe the answers of the minister have further corroborated the need for us to actually have this motion approved, especially seeing the manner in which this was handled. I believe that the authorities, that was the main challenge for myself as well as several others, that the authorities had not been requested to give advice before taking these decisions that have such far-reaching consequences, especially after having made statements to us that there does not seem to be any political motivation for the rise in crime or for the crime that had been committed that had brought extra attention to the table. As a body here in Parliament, we are concerned about the rise in crime in general, and that is our concern. We would want to see, and I've said it more than once, that certain things be done, actions be taken by authorities to ensure that the public of St. Martin understand what is violence, as well as the cyberbullying, as well as the manner in which persons are being libelous and scandalous, and that people know that that is also against the law. Those things are the things that we support here, and if there is a reason to take actions, then it should be done in the proper manner, especially since this legislation or this piece of regulation hasn't been finalized. I would actually want to hope that the authorities still give their advice on it, but I stand behind the statements that our way of conducting elections is free and clear. It is part of our culture, and even in the experience just last evening, very peaceful, and I want to thank the police officers who were there in and out of uniform, ensuring that there was, if anything had come up, that it could have been handled. So they do this all the time, and I think removing that aura of fear from the country is necessary. Any regulations on election day that need to be done, I still feel should be discussed also with us as the stakeholders within this. So that is the reason why this motion has been presented with the support of the National Alliance.
Mr. Chairman, I've heard and said a lot regarding this preliminary decision of the Council of Ministers. I have read the statements coming from members of the Council of Ministers, including the Prime Minister. But there is at no time that I understood this decision of the COM, for which the guidelines have not yet been established, to have decided to cancel all public events, public meetings, public gatherings, and election day gatherings. That would mean that there should have been, if this motion was correct, no public events. Nowhere in this motion does it speak about public political events. So even though the guidelines have not yet been established, one, so I can't seek or approve to cancel something of which I don't know what the working out is going to be. And secondly, there is no way that I have taken note of a decision to cancel all public events, public meetings, public gatherings. This motion cannot get my support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In this motion will get my support. It clearly states that a decision was taken by the Prime Minister of this country. If one cannot believe the words coming from the Prime Minister, who then should we believe? If a Prime Minister goes on a public statement and say, all political rallies, all political gathering, and election day gathering will be cancelled, will be prohibited, and like we like to use in here, halt. So based on that decision, so are we now as members of Parliament, when we hear things coming from the Council of Ministers, don't believe them no more, because when they say something, a week later, not even self a week later, a day later, the relevant minister can come in here and say, don't bother with he. I the boss, and I say, nothing goes so. So let me unconfuse the population of St. Martin now, based on what the minister say, and based on what we understand in here, is that there is nothing published as yet. We're waiting on advice. So go ahead, behave, act normal, no fear-mongering, have public meetings with a little precaution, but go ahead, because it's obviously clear that the statements coming from the Prime Minister is totally false. So right here, I just get the notification from my colleagues, and I would like to say, all public meetings cancelled, no polling station gathering allowed by Prime Minister Dr. Luc Mercelina. Again, if the highest body in this country make these kind of statements and they are false, who are we to believe in this country? If we can't believe he, who we must believe?
I'd be supporting this motion, but I can understand both sides of the argument regarding public rallies and the like. People have paid bills, they have made arrangements with caterers, etc. So I can understand that. But I also understand election day, which is something that I myself have publicly said. I don't believe that there should be persons around polling stations for many reasons. As I said in a previous version of this meeting, this started for me January when we had that fight outside Belvedere. And while that may not have been politically motivated or whatever, it happened. on a day when persons are expected to go and cast their vote in peace. I also made those objections known to the voting bureau after that election, so I won't be supporting the motion, but I just wanted to state that election culture is something that shifts. To the north of us, you're not allowed outside a polling station. There's no such thing as big rallies. So these things shift and they change, like all culture shifts and change. And we have to keep that in mind for future elections as well. Thank you, Mr.
I clap because I have learned when people put on a good show, that is what you do. Applaud. That is exactly what this is, a show. Members of Parliament are using the excuse now that the minister says the preliminary stages and he has not gathered information. Members of Parliament came in here last week on the premise of Luke Mercelina stating that the meetings are cancelled. So they knew very well what this motion was about. This is a very, very good scapegoat that they are using. And I say to everyone, like I stated before, and like the good MP Gum stated, all the caterers, all those involved, all the promo girls, all the businesses, everyone involved that makes money during this time, that benefits during this time, the families during this time, the sound people during this time, I want you to see who is against it. Who is against it right here. So don't say about, through you, Mr. Chair, preliminary, and this is far-reaching. We knew, because the sentiment stated last week in a public meeting showed that everyone was on the premise that the Prime Minister's word was law until the Minister of Justice bust that balloon. And now everything has changed. So I will be supporting this motion. And I hope everyone that is looking and listening and is depending on the little gigs during this election sees who is for and who is against you. So I should hope that is passed, because the numbers is very tight in here today.
In tallying the numbers, we have 8 for and 5 against. With that being said, I want to thank the Honorable Minister of Justice, Mr. Lyndon Constantine Lewis, and his support staff for their presence here today and providing the necessary information. I also take this opportunity with great pleasure, thanking the Honorable Top Cop for also being here and gracing his presence here in Parliament. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurance.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurances.
Does the separation of power really exist? And how does it function?
As I indicated at the beginning, what is democracy? We moved away from having monarchies and autocracies and authoritarian, yeah? So the model of Montesquieu said, hey, you have to be very aware that you don't put all the powers of a country in one hand. So there are three powers: the legislative power to make the rules, the executive power to execute the rules, and the judicial power to look at the rules and the execution of it, if how it's going. Yes, three pillars: judiciary, executive, and the law. Yes, legislator. Your question is, do we have a debt system in place? Partly. Why I say partly? We followed the Constitution of the Netherlands. In 1848, the Constitution of the Netherlands was amended. And so we don't have a legislator that is only Parliament, as I indicated before. A legislation is in generally drafted in collaboration with government, the executive. The executive government prepares a law and it goes to Parliament. Parliament looks at it, may amend it, and approves it, right? Of course, in between, you have other things like the High Council of the Council of Advice looks at it and advice of it, blah, blah, blah. So that separation is not 100% according to Montesquieu's thinking. So you have an overlap there. Nevertheless, Parliament also has the right to initiate law separate from the executive. And then the judiciary, indeed, is completely separated. Some people ask, but since you have a constitutional court, isn't the constitutional court then sitting on the seat of the legislator? No, the constitutional court cannot amend a law. The constitutional court can review the law and say, hey, listen, you missed the point there, or whatever. That is an extra security.
What recommendations would you make in order to further improve the democratic institution of the country?
If you look at the democratic institutions, I would not only talk about Parliament, government, the executive, and the judiciary. I will look at a bigger picture whereby I also look at the people, because our democracy starts with the people. And if you ask me, based on my experiences, as informateur, as ombudsman, name it, I concluded that not just the institutions have to be taken care of, but the people. Bring knowledge to the people. Because if the knowledge of the people about our governmental system, starting from the schools, we can never have a proper functioning democracy, because we can talk about Parliament, but if candidates postulating themselves to be members of Parliament do not understand the system and have not learned how our system works from the time they were in elementary school, they are not fully, I will say, equipped. So I would not look only at the institutions, but I will look at the whole community. Another thing that I would say in the institutions, and they have nothing to do with the law, it is with how do you operate your institutions. I believe that we have to be more critical in our institutions by self-assess the institution, let's say at least yearly. And we have a lot of catch up to do. So we have to do a lot of regular leadership and governing training. Yes, not because you are a minister or a member of parliament that you know it all. I have a PhD in law and I'm still learning every day. You have to continuously upgrade yourself. Keep in touch with what is happening in the world. Very important, something that I would like to advise if you or recommend and for our institutions, look at enforcement and control of laws and regulation. What I would like to improve in Parliament, that they establish a proper code of ethics. I think they even have it already. However, we can implement rules, but don't police them or don't comply with them, or, then why we make the rules? What are the consequences?